Does the 4-year Bitcoin cycle still work? Is Bitcoin going to top this year as we are nearing the 600-day mark after the last halving? I've been getting a lot of questions like these. Based on the 4-year cycle, a lot of people are getting fearful. They really want to sell. They're saying the cycle is topping out imminently. We're going to answer that directly today. And what does this mean for altcoins? Will they even make a run at all? So today I will dissect the 4-year cycle theory based on both time and price cycles to show you why this old concept doesn't really matter anymore. And before I get started, just want to make this perfectly clear to you guys. I'm getting roasted in my own chat here before we started here. I'm not saying this is a super cycle that Bitcoin is only going to go up. No, that's not the case. I've always had the Bitcoin exit strategy, like I have said here. And also, I knew this was going to be interpreted this way. I'm not saying that Bitcoin's bull market has been broken and now it's over, right? I see already a comment here. You are broken. Bitcoin have still at least 2 to 3 months left and maybe more by historic data. Look, man, I totally agree with you. I'm not saying the bull market is over. On the contrary, I'm saying we shouldn't be looking at an old 4-year set timeline model to determine when we want to sell all of our bags, because that data doesn't show that it's accurate anymore in these past 2 to 3 years. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Okay, before we get started, make sure to check out our bots on Pownex. As usual, when the market is chopping, these bots do exceptionally well because you see for Bitcoin, for instance, even though it's down 2%, our closer range bot that's arbitraging a lot more is actually making more returns in this period because it's always buying low and selling high. That's what the grid bots do. And for our long-term bots, for this one, for example, where we have our price range set at 89,000, this is the absolute bottom that I see in the bull market, where it's a extremely long-term support, and then 200K that helps you take profit. So this is really all long-term ranges that I have set personally. And if you believe that the market is still early, but you need a way to easily enter and exit into the positions you want, then check out these bots. They will really help you take away some of the emotion which comes with market chops. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with just charts directly. So I want to take this in a couple directions. So the 4-year cycles are not only based on time. So a lot of people have this confusion that, oh, look at the years, right? These are all the Bitcoin halving years. And so by the time that Bitcoin reaches these green months, that's when you need to sell. Otherwise, Bitcoin only goes down after that. There is another part that this doesn't consider, which is also a 4-year cycle. And that's the time. That's the price. Okay. So the whole concept here is that you need to overlay as well the peaks and troughs of each cycle, because otherwise, like, how do you see a cycle? It's just 4 years. Then the reason why people identify these cycles before is because it follows a certain power law return, where the cycle lows go to these lower bands and the cycle highs goes to the higher bands. And usually by the 600 days mark after the halving event, Bitcoin should have reached around the very overvalued stage in the cycle, touching these higher bands. This is what also matters. And a lot of people are not considering this. So that's why I really wanted to cover this today. Okay, so before we even get there, let's just break down how the last 3 cycles have gone. Okay, so here are the last 3 cycles for Bitcoin based on halving. So we have we're going to discount the 2012 cycle because honestly, the Bitcoin was way too small then. But even those did match this valuation standard, right? These where Bitcoin had to go up a lot in order to reach its actual top. So let's look at the starting from 2014 top. So the first halving at 2012, we're not going to account for the genesis time. After the first halving in 2012, by the time that Bitcoin reached its top, this was how many days to here? No, that's a price. This was 370 days. 365 days. Okay, right about 1 year after the halving that Bitcoin topped. And then we take this to the 2016 halving. After the 2016 halving until the 2017 blow off top, it took Bitcoin 520 days, give or take, because this is weekly. And then again, let's look at the 2020 halving. By the first top on Bitcoin price, that was 336 days. But even at a very extended cycle, by the second high, we all knew Bitcoin made a slightly higher high in November 2021. That was around 540, 550 days after the halving. So now, looking at right now, we are already at the 470th day after the halving event. This is why a lot of people are worried now. This green part directly shows you. Now people are saying, oh, look, the last 2 cycles where Bitcoin made a top, it was only under 550 days. So now Bitcoin has to top within 550 days after the halving event. This is what a lot of people are saying. They're very worried. Is there truth to that? Sure. I mean, stock to flow model, supply and demand, sure. But does it just have to be a random date like that? I don't think logically that makes that much sense. Okay, first of all. And second is that you're completely discounting the price factor, right? Because look at the previous 3 tops. Bitcoin needed to reach these higher bands in terms of the power law bands, in terms of the rainbow bands, in order to reach a blow-off top. So this is a core basis of why I'm not worried here. Even if this does happen, that's actually a short-term, very bullish signal. Say Bitcoin goes and reaches a top by the end of this year. In order for that to happen, we literally have to have a blow-off top, which by definition means Bitcoin needs to go up really fast, really quick. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. You should not think on these 4-year cycle and use it to trap yourself and say, oh my God, look, I got to start selling and I need to be bearish now. I don't know if that's the right mindset to have right now because Bitcoin has been going very slowly this cycle. That's the basis that we all have. So yeah, that's basically why I'm not worried about this at all yet. But okay, let's go back to the timing. So according to the traditional 4-year cycle, let's say 550 days. Let's just make it precise. So we go to 550 days. That takes us to right around October, November of this year. Okay, that's the first sign that by the 4-year cycle standard, Bitcoin should be reaching a blow-off top. Okay, not just price has to stop there. It has to be a blow-off top first. The second is here. So when you look at another type of model that is the, if I can make it more obvious here. When you look at the take profit strategy according to 4-year cycles, okay, usually these will give you a rainbow chart that is based on the number of months after a Bitcoin halving event. Let me just hide this one. This will be clear. So how people use these rainbow charts, right, is that they overlay the colors on top of Bitcoin's price, and each month the color changes based on how many months it has been after the last Bitcoin halving event. And what the long-term, cycle theory purists say is that Bitcoin needs to top in these green periods, and by the end of the green months, where it reaches blue, this is usually when price starts to go down, and that is usually 20 months after the halving event, or around 600 days. Okay, that 600-day mark is really important. So this is a signal that people said always will work, the cycle purists. And you look at here, right, 600 days, it led to the first lower high and lower low. And you look at 2014, technically, yeah, pretty similar, significant breakdown. This wasn't even 600 days. This was even quicker. But regardless, once it turns blue, that's when you sell. So this is what people say. Well, how close are we to blue? 600 day from the last Bitcoin halving in April 20th, 2024, will bring us to around here, mid-December 2025. So by the end of this year, people are saying that you must sell. I don't agree with this. I think that's pretty random. First of all, it's a random date that you're giving yourself a hard deadline. Like, why would you? And second, why don't you just use a market structure, right? The reason why people were able to identify these times to sell anyways is because market structure was broken. It's because Bitcoin made lower highs and lower lows like this, right? Higher low, higher high here, it was still bullish, but lower low and lower high. So once the lower low and lower highs have been printed, it's not too late to sell them. Price should trump a random time signal, right? What price shows is real demand. What time shows is convenience. It's just, most of the time, it just happened to be that time. So similarly here, if you just followed a simple downtrend, uptrend, strategy, you look at, okay, it made a first low, it made a high bounce, but it didn't get above the previous high, and made a new lower low. Very clear. So you would sell on this lower low. You would not have missed much instead of using this random date. So it's not that I don't believe that Bitcoin will eventually go into a downtrend. I believe so. But I don't think it has to happen by the end of this year, just because that's what the 4-year cycle says. Okay? So that's how I see the 4-year cycle being too tight. And it tells us we have to sell by the end of this year. Kind of weird. Okay. And finally, let's put the time and price together to look at why this doesn't even matter anymore. Even if you believe in the 4-year cycle theory, you don't need to be bearish right now because of something I'll show you right now. Okay, so when you match everything together based on both time and price, this is what you get. This is what the 4-year cycle tells you. So every cycle is dependent on supposedly the Bitcoin halving. Okay, so you have a halving event like in 2016, and then price drops a bit. You have a run up, and Bitcoin around the 550 day-ish, right? It reaches the top of the regression band, and you take profit there. And then by these months, I don't know how many exact months this is, but about, what is this, like 950 to 1,000 days-ish, it reaches the cycle low, which is also close to the bottom of the regression band, then you buy. So this worked in 2014, it worked in 2018, helped you buy in 2019, and then helped you sell in 2021, helped you buy in 2022. So now people are saying, okay, we need to use it to be able to sell in the cycle. Technically, that could work. But the big caveat is it needs to actually reach the top of the regression band. Otherwise, by definition, the cycle theory has been broken because it's only halfway there. So you can't say like Bitcoin shot up in its valuation just like the previous cycles by this time, because it didn't. Right? So my understanding and the way I like to think about this argument is, yes, if Bitcoin having four-year cycle theory is right, I'm totally okay with that. But that has to mean that within the next 4 months, by the end of the year, by the 600-day mark, before the color turns blue, Bitcoin needs to reach way higher. Like, I'm talking about like 200K. So that's not a bad thing at all, is it? You don't need to worry if you truly believe in the four-year cycle theory, because the four-year cycle says, okay, by the 600-day-ish, we should have a blow-off top around the top of the regression band. That's looking at like 200K. So going from 115K to 200K in the next 4 months, that would be a crazy gain. That would be crazy bullish. So why would you be bearish and worried right now? That doesn't make any sense. And personally, I don't think that's that likely for Bitcoin to go up that quickly. That's why I don't think the Fourier cycle will play out this year. We will see, but I'll be totally okay if it does. Like, if we shoot up to 200K, great. I'll be so much more rich. Like, take your Fourier cycle, have your win. I'll be so happy just because Bitcoin will be 200K anyways. And even more conservatively, okay, you might say, yeah, we don't have to reach all the way to the top. You can take the minor lines on the Bitcoin rainbows, okay? And then you say, each time Bitcoin peaks at one lower rainbow. This is what people even make that argument, okay? So 2014 and then 2018, it peaked at all the way the top. And then 2021, it was this. It was one order lower. Even if we reach this, another order lower, okay? That's conservative. That would be right here. In October, if we peak in October, we're talking about reaching 183K in October. Or if it's in December, 192K in December. Like, still, that is an amazing return. That would actually be euphoria. So there's no reason to be worried right now to say, oh, look, the Fourier cycle says this, and thus we should be selling now. No, if it happens, and let's say Bitcoin just goes ballistic over the next 2-3 months, of course you're going to start thinking about selling. Everyone's going to start thinking that. And then that's totally fine. But it hasn't even happened yet. So why are we worried about this random timeline and limiting us this way? If Bitcoin doesn't hit 180K by the end of this year, it will be nowhere close to last 3 cycles performance based on the 4-year time frame. So then, at that point, by Q1 next year, let's say Bitcoin is only at 130K, 140K, it wouldn't be nowhere close. It would still be basically here. Okay, let's say February, it's at 150K, it will be here. It will barely be close to, it would be like basically average in terms of growth. So that wouldn't be euphoria. That wouldn't be blowout top at all. By that point, I think it would be pretty safe to say, okay, the 4-year cycle is probably broken and we shouldn't need to sell so quickly anymore. And then at that point, the only thing that would still be intact would be a trend theory, right? Where you look at lower highs and lower lows and when the Bitcoin uptrend has actually been broken. But yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I don't want to say that for sure we're not going to peak this year. We could. But if we peak this year, Bitcoin needs to reach a very high price in the next 4 months. That's what Bitcoin 4-year cycle says. So I will be totally okay with that. Yeah, and that's why, I don't want to take this 4-year cycle theory and put a bearish sentiment on it. I think that's pretty weird. Even if you believe deeply in the 4-year cycle theory, it's actually very bullish because the 4-year cycle tells you we're about to blow off top, but then the blow hasn't even happened yet. So you should be buying more instead of selling now. Okay, just some ways to think about it and ways to control your emotions. Okay, let's look briefly about altcoins as well. So what does the 4-year cycle say about altcoins? Let's look at Bitcoin dominance. And these rainbow charts also can be applied to Bitcoin dominance. So let me remove these couple drawings first. So in the last 2 cycles where altcoins have been a thing, the altcoin season roughly started around the 1-year mark after the Bitcoin halving event. You see in 2017, summer 2017, Bitcoin dominance had a first major low, and then it bounced, but it didn't make a high. So this was for sure the start of a downtrend. That would have been altcoin season. And if you bought altcoins in summer 2017, you had a very easy 6-month long altcoin season by January, February 2018. That was the main altcoin mania, ICO mania. And then you look at 2021, very similar. So ignoring this COVID blip, you have a bounce here, but then the first time that this low has been broken would have been here. It broke way below this previous low, all the way down here, and it was not going to bounce way above here. So I would say the convincing break was right around here in April 2021. This was clearly, okay, altcoins were going to do well, very well. And that lasted about at least 8 months until the end of 2021. So from the halving event until that confirmation was about 340 days, just under 1 year. So then you look at this cycle. The altcoin season hasn't started at all. Usually it starts around that 1 year mark, which would have been April of this year. But nothing is here. Bitcoin dominance is not in a downtrend at all. Even right now, it's still technically in a macro uptrend because the weekly candles haven't shown a lower high and lower low structure yet. And we are already at a 470-day mark now after the halving. So what needs to happen for Bitcoin dominance to break down and for altcoin season? 2 things, 2 scenarios for this to happen. Number one, if the 4-year cycle is correct and we do have this Bitcoin blow off top, like what we were talking about earlier, Bitcoin literally goes straight up from 115K today to 200K by December. Pretty crazy to think about. That will cause a altcoin season. You don't have to look at any other liquidity data, rate cuts, whatever. It doesn't matter. Because Bitcoin would have had so much interest, people would just literally have so much money, profits from Bitcoin that they will ape altcoins. It's the typical Bitcoin-driven altcoin season. But it needs a very big move on Bitcoin. Nonetheless, if this does happen, Bitcoin goes from here straight up to 200K, we will have altcoin season. Very, very simple. Altcoins will then start to do well. You would have something probably like this, where boom, like Bitcoin dominance goes like this. Maybe not that much percentage, but it will be very sharp drop if Bitcoin shoots up. Okay. I think that's unlikely. Just like how I think Bitcoin shooting straight up to 200K, causing this euphoria blow off top is unlikely. I also think that altcoins immediately giving us like this easy mode altcoin season, that's quite unlikely. I think what's more likely is for Bitcoin to keep doing its thing and go up slowly, like it has been doing this cycle for the last 2 years. It goes up a bit, it chops down, it goes up a bit, it chops down. All of this action has been like this. There's no reason to assume it's different. So if it continues doing this, then how do we look at Bitcoin dominance? How do we look at altcoin season? So 2 ways, very simple, right? You look at the 50-week SMA, needs to break the 50-week SMA, number 1. Number 2, it needs to show a downtrend, break below 50-week SMA, next bounce should be lower than the previous high, like this, and then that's a downtrend. And it needs to follow global liquidity. So I don't want to repeat myself too much, but global liquidity is still consolidating here and potentially trending down a bit in Q4. From now until Q4 as the TGA gets refilled. So maybe global liquidity trends down a bit, and that can lead to Bitcoin dominance bouncing a little bit before it eventually breaks down. So if that happens, like this whole period would not be a easy mode altcoin season. As long as Bitcoin doesn't shoot straight up. So we will know the answer for sure by the end of the year. After the 600 days mark passes, after the last Bitcoin halving event, the 4-year cycle will be definitive. Because the green period will be over. We'll be turning to the blue period. And if the color is already blue, but Bitcoin dominance is still doing this, nobody will be able to say anymore that, oh, look, the 4-year cycle tells us, we should be selling alts. Like, that doesn't make any sense. We never even had alt season. And on Bitcoin itself as well, if Bitcoin price hasn't reached anywhere near the targets we have up here, based on the cycle theory, where it's only at maybe 140, 150K, but it's already in these blue months based on the Bitcoin halving. Nobody will be able to say anymore, hey, look, Bitcoin should have topped. That was a euphoria blow off top. No, that's simply not true, because we didn't have the price growth necessary yet to reach euphoria stage. Okay, so that's what I believe. And that's why I'm not worried. This 4-year cycle, we will know for sure if it's over or not by the end of this year. But mostly that doesn't matter. If the 4-year cycle is to play out, this year, we should see a very sharp increase on Bitcoin anyways. So we should be bullish. But if the 4-year cycle doesn't play out, that simply means the cycle is extended longer. So then we should still be bullish. There is no reason to mid-curve it and think on the 4-year cycle, looking at this and saying, hey, look, I must sell when this green color turns blue. Who gives you that hard rule? Why would there be a hard rule like that? I think that's kind of silly. So that's my opinion. That's why I think the 4-year cycle talk is kind of limiting now based on what this cycle has shown us. Okay, that's my argument on this. Let's see how it plays out. I will be closely following this until the end of the year. I lean in the camp of us not getting a blow off top this year, and instead just keep chopping up slowly and extend into 2026. This doesn't mean it's a super cycle. I think what really matters is liquidity now, way less so the Bitcoin halving event. So Bitcoin follows global liquidity, global M2. Okay, so M2 money supply, you can directly plot it against Bitcoin on TradingView. And you see M2 money supply has been a way better indicator telling us the tops and bottoms of Bitcoin. Down here it was bottom, up here it was top. Here, not only did it tell us the bottom of Bitcoin, but it also showed us the acceleration of Bitcoin after COVID, after money printing started to go ballistic. And same thing back here, it topped. So the next time we see M2 money supply topping, you should be worried about Bitcoin. But it's not showing that. We haven't even had nearly as much of a dramatic move on M2 money supply as the last 2 cycles. Look at this. This growth was insane, from 104, I believe that's $1 trillion, to $140 trillion. So far, since the beginning of the year, this has only been 10 trillion, whereas the COVID, what is this, like a year, had a 35 trillion print, okay, on M2. And looking at the 2017 cycle as well, by percentage, I mean, this was just straight up in money printing. The M2 supply hasn't shown that big of a change this cycle. We barely just broke out of the top we had in February 2022 and just started to accelerate a little bit since January, right? This trend was a lot slower since 2022, 2023. It just started to accelerate a bit. So I don't think we need to worry about liquidity slowing down for Bitcoin. And Altcoin as well, global liquidity, the part that actually matters for risk on assets, is also nowhere near the 2022 levels. This makes so much more sense to use compared to the 4-year cycles. Okay, we're just starting to see a little bit of an uptick here on global liquidity, this purple chart. And then you see Bitcoin dominance starting to fall a little bit, while we have had all of this period of downtrend on global liquidity. So there is so much more upside for global liquidity to go and reverse this 2-year-long downtrend, where only after that happens can we have a sustained Bitcoin dominance downtrend and altcoin season. I mean, you can't simply print so much money that altcoin, to cause a altcoin season top within 4 months. That'd be crazy. Then literally, the Fed has to print, I don't know how many trillions of money and inject it into the market, make this chart literally go straight up in 4 months, and then maybe we have something like this. That's simply not how liquidity conditions work. So yeah, I don't think this is likely at all. I think it's going to be a lot slower. So that's why I really take the 4-year cycle with a grain of salt now. Maybe we get a blow off top this year with a big push, but I don't think that's that likely. I'll leave it with that. Stay bullish. Control your emotion, control your fear. Don't let these things flood yourselves out of your bags. And we will see. We will see by the end of the year what happens. Okay. Follow me on X at VirtualBacon0x for quick alpha before I make them into in-depth videos. Join our community on the Coiners, link in the description. Check out our trading bots on Ponex, full tutorial link in the description. It will help you DCA into the market and sell slowly as market goes up as well. So some easy ways for you to manage your emotions. That's it. Everything I wanted to plug. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next video and next live stream. Bye-bye.